I'm this type of a guy that when there is this hype on Gartner cycle, at the top of the Gartner cycle, I'm just getting away from the topic. I don't want to be there. I see so many bad things around how companies are dealing with these topics. I'm not only talking about artificial intelligence, but also other topics. The larger organization, the more useless meetings. And there are meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings, and let's plan the meeting for another meeting. And for example, now I don't look anymore at how much I would earn on this book, because in the beginning I was looking at it. I am honest with you. I was looking at it. I wanted to know how much will it earn. But if I know that someone doesn't like to talk with someone else, I don't come to him and I say, hey, you need to improve your soft skills because you can't talk with other colleagues. No.
Hey there, busy programmers. Thanks for tuning into the Busy Programmer series, where we dive into the stories, insights, and beyond code challenges of some of the most inspiring people in tech. Before we jump into today's conversation, I would like to ask a quick favor. Statistics show that over half of people who watch this kind of interviews don't subscribe to the channels. So if you enjoy what you are seeing or hearing here and want to keep up with more real, relatable content about life in tech, hit that subscribe or follow button. It's easy and it doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us grow this community, bring on more of the guests we are excited to feature, and keep adding real value for you. Don't be a stranger in read mode only as well. Drop your comments, leave questions for me and my guests, and suggest anyone you would love to see on the show. Together we can shape this channel into a space that truly reflects what matters most to all of us busy programmers. All right, let's get into it. Hope you enjoy today's episode. Okay, so we can start yet another interview with a fellow busy programmer, and this time I'm joined by Maciej MJ Jędrzejewski. Hi Maciej, how are you doing today?
Hey, thanks for the invitation. And I'm, of course, doing perfectly fine. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for accepting the invitation. And of course, we'll be digging into all of the activities that you are doing. And we've met a while ago, and we've crossed some paths through the IT conferences in Poland. But you are not based in Poland, but you will probably mention soon. But yeah, let's start from the basics. Can you just introduce yourself for anyone who will be watching or listening to us today?
Yeah, so I'm MJ. As you mentioned, I am always using this because, yeah, my surname is very hard to pronounce, and it's always easier to just use MJ. So if anyone will meet me in future, just come to me and say MJ, and I will know that it's
You compete with a lot of famous MJs then in the past, That's what I can
Michael
say.
Jordan, Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, good initials, that for sure.
yeah,
It's way
absolutely.
easier in the international audience for sure. Yeah, as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And as you mentioned, I'm Polish, but I'm not based in Poland anymore. I'm living in Switzerland, enjoying this beautiful country from nature perspective, mountains, cows in front of your window, or sheep. So this is really, really cool. And other than that, I'm 12 years in the IT, or almost 13, because I started in 2011. It was not a full-time job. I started as apprentice in IBM, or it was apprentice in IBM. And then I started my full-time job with some internship at Volvo in Poland. And then at some point I became more or less more senior software developer than I used to be when I started. And since then, I continued this way. I became architect in several different projects, products, tech lead also. I attended conferences as a speaker. ran some workshops as trainer. So yeah, that's more or less my story of the IT career.
Yeah, sounds kind of easy going and evolutionary, but I do believe that it was ups and downs in various cases. But then, when you started the whole IT journey, do you remember when was the first time when you was exposed to anything coding related?
Yes, yes, I remember that, and it was in high school.
High
I
school.
still remember the first class, and it was, I think, C++. There was IDE, let's call it IDE. It was called Dev C++. And I still remember implementing some simple stuff in C++. So like, yeah, draw the Christmas tree from the stars, yes, or so. So this was this was my first touch with programming, but I started with computers way earlier. I still remember my first Atari. It was Atari 65XE. You know, this one with cassettes that you were
Yeah.
loading games from cassette, and you were not able to, you were not supposed to breathe because yeah, every little thing
Yeah.
could stop the game loading, and it was huge problem for us. And then yeah, I started to play around with computers, but of course it was games.
Mhm.
And at some point I fell in love with overclocking processors. So I started burning motherboards, processors, and so on. So yeah, I think it lasts for 5 years, something like that, this passion. And
Mhm.
then I stopped it completely.
Okay, that's so you've been exposed, so involved, but the love and hate relationship was in place. And you I found an information that you named generally the software architecture later on as your second love. So when this love to architecture started, then after being a coder for a while.
You know what? I still remember when I struggled, or maybe even not struggled, but you know, when you enter software architecture or in maybe software development world, you are young and you just want to survive. So you don't want to break things, and you just want to do feature after another feature after another feature and get paid for it. At least that was the start of my career. I was so worried that I will break something or that I will do something wrong. You need to remember that this was this time where this ivory tower of architects was in place. And it was always like, I beg for a change. Can I do that? Yes, you can, from the ivory tower. Yes, so
Yeah.
that was the thing, how it all started. But at some point, I started missing something. You know, I knew that okay, here I have C sharp, I have .NET, but how is it deployed? What are the files that are allowing it to be deployed? Where it is deployed? How the database is set up, and so on and so on. I started digging into that, and by digging I mean really digging into how the
Hmm.
things are done.
Yeah.
I
And it
wanted
was
to
even
learn
before the
that.
continuous integration and deployments tools that when reached the popularity, right? It was the days since still the days when the FTP servers were in place to deploy things, or
uh,
after those days, those beautiful days.
you know what, I still remember these days with
Okay.
FTP clients, and but it was more for personal projects. Like when I
Okay.
wanted to do some website of myself, it was on the FTP server. But from the perspective of commercial usage, commercial programs, it was already the time of TFS.
Okay. Good old
Yeah,
times.
yes, yes. But still, you know, there were so many things around, so many things, because you had already cloud. When I started, I was mainly doing the on-premise deployment.
Mhm.
So Let's say it was a little bit easier to understand, but a little trickier from the infrastructure perspective. I still remember guys who were calculating the infrastructure. Like there was a job position at the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy was calculating
Ordering
infrastructure.
servers and CPU. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but when I started, it was already this time of cloud. There was, I think, Azure Cloud was already for 4 years when I started. So, but it was getting traction in this time of 2012, 2015. It got a lot of traction. I mean, cloud, Kubernetes, Docker, all these things started to appear. And I had to learn all of these things. And what I wanted to do was to learn these fundamentals and to know how to configure each tool, each platform, each library, each component. So that was my goal. And I think at some point it clicked. So after reading tons of books, watching tons of different tutorials, by the way, there were not that many tutorials at that point in time. Nowadays, it's way easier. And after some time, it just clicked, and I started thinking more about software architecture and started falling in love with it, really.
Okay.
So
Would you then consider yourself as a very good programmer? Was it a kind of evolution of stepping beyond the code because I don't know, you were more interested in how and what things are doing besides the layer of applications that you were building, or was it more like maybe not an evolution or step beyond that, but more like step towards something that might be just on a little bit bigger picture from what you were doing previously?
I would say it was a sidestep because I wouldn't call myself a very good programmer. I would call myself an average programmer by the time when I started to be interested in software architecture.
Okay.
And at some point, while digging into all these architectural concepts, I also started improving my skills as a programmer. So I think this is important when you think about moving towards software architecture and it's not enterprise architecture. You need to have your hands on, hands dirty with the code, sit together with the team, code together with the team, be just touched by all these problems that happen. And this is something what I did, really. And still I was evolving in software architecture world, but thanks to this curiosity for digging into the stuff related to architecture, I started also to dig into code. But still, nowadays, I wouldn't call myself like, okay, I have been programming C# for 12 years, C++ for 3, TypeScript for 8, but I know so many guys who are way better than me from perspective of C#, and I worked with them, and I can see what guys are doing, let's say, in the internet. Nick Chapsas or Milan Ivanovic. Yeah, they know a lot. They know a lot. Or from performance perspective, Daniel Marbach, he's a really great guy. So I wouldn't call myself a great programmer, but nowadays I would say I'm a good programmer. So not average like I used to be before. Nowadays I would call myself that I'm a good programmer, and it's still possible while doing software architecture or focusing on software architecture.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and that question was very intentional because a lot of us, a lot of people, at least I was speaking to, says that sometimes they were forced to evolutionize their role from being a great programmer towards either architect or tech lead or any other positions that were even more managerial than hands-on coding, and then it's the worst or the best way to turn great programmer into not that great manager or not that great architect. And it's not like it's easy path going from step A to B to C to D, etc. It's often full of side steps, and I like this kind of approach because I feel like this is the most natural evolution of the roles, because we all sometimes feel maybe not fulfilled or sometimes even bored with the ways that we are doing, and then there is so many hats to wear in our industry that we can always find something interesting for us, right?
On one hand, yes. On the other hand, we always tend to see the grass greener on the other side.
Yes.
And when you enter the role, it is not greener anymore. So then you see like, okay, I should have stayed in a previous position, or I should not have moved to this manager role or architect, because that's the case. It's easier to be a great programmer and then become a great architect than being a great programmer and becoming a great manager.
Mm-hmm.
Still, when you are a software architect, you need a lot of soft skills, because you need to deal, of course, it depends on the scale of the company, but you need to deal with office politics, of departments politics, people relations, networking, being very clear in what you are describing, what you are explaining, because sometimes you will have technical people and sometimes you will have non-technical people. And I have several examples of my colleagues who are really great, either if we are looking at programmers or DevOps or any other technical role. They are great technically and they can explain things to technical teams easily. But then there is this point where they need to explain things to business people, non-technical. And it's not good, I would say, or not good enough.
Very polite. Yeah.
Yeah, because for me, when you mention, like, when you are with non-technical people and you mention Kubernetes, they are gone, they are lost.
Yeah, true.
And this is something that you need to think of when you are moving towards architectural.
But then, of course, you've been involved in many roles. Do you think that there is a possibility to wear those multiple hats at the same time? Because I've been seeing a lot of people trying to fulfill many roles in the teams, and sometimes it works because it must work for many of the teams or companies. But sometimes it doesn't work because they are, if you try to be great in everything, then you are not good at anything, or you definitely abandon some things or some areas of your specifics because something else is more important at the moment. Do you think it is possible? Because having architect having hands-on into development, that makes complete sense. Same with the tech leads or even CTOs who are very detached from the code after a while. They don't understand a lot of problems that are appearing in the teams, but at the same time, should they be coding? Should they be dividing their time, and how, if that's something what you could see or observe based on maybe your experience? Did you try to wear multiple hats at the same time, or it was always like one or another?
No, I used to have multiple hats at one time. And I would say that until, for example, you merge the role of software architect and tech lead, and it's based on a team, like you have a single team where you are acting as software architect and tech lead, it's possible. And I will tell you why. Because for me, software architect is not a role. It's more like a function. Same with tech lead. So my role is software engineer. That's my role. But I am acting as software architect, same as my colleague is acting as a front-end developer, another one as a back-end developer, and so on. So these are functions, and the role itself is software engineer. And while doing that, you can be in the same time a tech lead and software architect. I think these two functions play well when they are merged together, but it also depends on how you set up software architecture in your team. Like, my approach is that I share software architecture with the entire team. I have juniors, I have seniors, mids, anyone. Everyone is responsible for software architecture. And I don't care if the good idea comes from junior or the good idea comes from super senior software developer. No, in my teams, everyone is equal. And I don't have anything to say as a software architect, like, no, we must go that way. No way.
Mm-hmm.
I invented some kind of a method, or let's say a meeting. This is crazy because it's a meeting, but it's called developers carousel. And
Okay.
this developers
Tell us more
carousel.
about it. Tell us more about it then. Sounds
Okay.
intriguing.
So in general, this developer carousel works in a way that we meet together in the morning as soon as possible, let's say 8 a.m. And there are only technical guys in this meeting. You can join this meeting, but you don't need to. This is one of the key rules of such meeting. And in that meeting, we say, hey guys, I have a problem. Yesterday, I spent 4 hours on this issue and I can't find a solution. And then all the guys who are in this meeting, they are looking at this issue together and they say, oh, hey, I remember that I had such a problem 5 years ago. And probably I know how to solve it. And then these guys, after this meeting, they exit and they work in pair. Sometimes it will be mob programming because there will be more people. And this way, this software architecture, the knowledge about the business domain and so on is spread across everyone. So we don't need to have one guy, go-to guy, and then ask for architecture. No. At that meeting, we are also discussing our ideas for solving this issue from perspective of architecture. And then if there are two options, we are voting for the option that will win. And if you have, let's say, result 4-2, that's great. Option A with 4 votes wins. But if you have result like draw 3-3, then what we do, or what is my function, is that I try to explain again both concepts and to say disadvantages and advantages of both. But I don't try to convince anyone to go this direction or that direction. And then we vote again. If there is another draw, like 3-3, then we toss the dice. That's it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the concept, and again, I know that knowledge exchange is a huge problem amongst not only architects but general teams in all kind of levels of experiences, and it's interesting how you resolve that by this concept, because yeah, it seems like just immediately resolution and action from the problem that was someone was facing seems to do the job. And yeah, I kind of like it. I don't know if I want to try to implement something similar, because that would help.
It's like swarming, swarming, like everyone analyzes some feature, let's say, and then split. We are, as the development team, we are then responsible for splitting it to different tasks, and everyone knows everything about that feature. So it's kind of swarming. There is one difference, which is if you are not in the meeting on purpose because you were not interested in it, you accept what the guys voted in the meeting. That's this rule that we have already we have had in the past, that if you are not there, you accept it, even though you hate it, you don't like this solution and so on, you just have to accept it. And if it occurs that in 2 months we are hit by our decision, there is no blaming on anyone. No. We sit together as a team, we say, okay, we made a mistake, you guys were right, but your solution did not pass through, so now we have to consider it again, and then we are solving it. And it creates this kind of super simple collaboration and super smooth collaboration with the knowledge that spreads on everyone.
But also some kind of concept of shared responsibility, not someone, which usually might be challenging, because we often want to have someone being responsible for that decision, and then of course someone can be easily blamed for the bad or good decision. But if that was made as a shared responsible decision, it's really tough to blame a team, and that's a shared responsibility to change the opinion, because opinions are changing, and yeah, we need to do that. I really like this concept. So do you use anything more than that then?
Other than developers carousels?
Yes. What else helps you.
I always try to convince people to do this pair or mob programming. This is something that I really like. And if I hear that, but we don't know how to do that or so, I try to lead by example. So I say, okay, so I go there with you guys and we will try together to do this mob programming or pair programming with one guy. And this is great because you show that, okay, it's possible. They learn how to do that because there might be a chance that they don't know how to do that. And you have to show it. And when you show it, it usually goes well. I mean, next time they will try to find another guy for this pair programming or for several guys for mob programming and so on and so on. So this is something that I also use. And another thing that I think is quite important is this short feedback loop. I mean, probably you know long living branches. Like one guy sits on a branch on some feature or part of the feature, and after 2 weeks it's ready for review. Then there is this ping pong of review rework, 150 comments and changes in 120 files. Yeah, so this is something that I don't like. And what I try to do is to find a solution to shorten it. It can be done, for example, with short-living branches. And by short-living, I mean, as a team, you can agree that we are running our branches maximum for 2 days, and then for 1 day, and then for half day, and so on and so on. At some point, it will be like 2-3 hours, and the branch is, let's say, merged with your trunk. Of course, if it is possible, this purest form of trunk-based development would also be an option, but it all depends on context, on people who you have, on the application that you are working with, if you need to support previous releases or not, and so on and so on. So it's not like we all hear in this social media bubbles that you must do it this way, because if you don't do that this way, you are doing it wrong. And then there are
McDonald's, I don't know if you know that, but McDonald's had a policy that was called one way. And I was attending one of the trainings back in the days that they said, there's only one way to do things in McDonald's. There's no other ways. If you are doing Big Mac, there's only one way to do the proper Big Mac. And it's a little bit different in our industry and in our solutions, because there is no one way to rule it all, right? So, but this concept won't work.
Yes, that's why I'm always saying that you should not, or we should not talking about the way. We should always talk about a way to do something. This small difference, the versus a, makes a huge impact. But yeah, again, if you would just look at Twitter, LinkedIn, or so, if you don't do continuous deployments, trunk-based development, test-driven development, domain-driven design, or anything else, you are wrong.
Of course. But then again, it's not that debate. Debate is always good, and I think that this is also raising a lot of interesting findings among the teams. And still, architecture implementation, it will always be the mother of arguments, and there will be one way to rule them all. There will be an ivory tower architect still amongst the teams. But you've mentioned something interesting, and I think that's where we can probably jump on to discuss it further, because you've mentioned those soft skills, which are also right now heavily, maybe not heavily mentioned, but right now I feel like it's more seen and appreciated amongst the team members if they have some more skills than just hardcore skills, let's say in developing high efficiency C++ code or whatever else. As your role, let's say, wearing a hat of team lead, tech lead, or generally leader in the team, do you also try to encourage people to do more around their soft skills, to battle and compete the ideas to challenge themselves, or even speak to each other. I think this idea of the meeting that you've mentioned is one of the platforms to let them talk more and exchange the ideas. But do you feel like a lot of people still lacks those soft skills and ability to resolve problems outside of the code, and how do you try to then address that or help people to jump there?
So I usually don't address it directly if I am not asked for it. So I observe, absolutely, I observe people, how people behave in different situations and so on. But with those things which I mentioned, swarming, pair programming, mob programming, carousels, these things, these are mechanisms that triggers this exchange of the information between people, and it's natural. So then if I know that someone doesn't like to talk with someone else, I don't come to him and I say, hey, you need to improve your soft skills because you can't talk with other colleagues. No, I try to run it naturally. So at some point they usually get the point of this pair programming or swarming or whatever else, and it's becoming natural. And when it becomes natural, your problem is solved. So I am never pushing. This is something that I omit heavily because I know it's tough. However, if someone comes to me and asks me for help, I had a colleague who had a great skill technically, but who's lacking this explanation of concepts to non-technical people. So he asked me for help. He came to me and he asked, how do I do that? How do I find these examples? And so on and so on. And I then showed him how I prepare for such meetings, how many examples do I have. Like I have, let's say, around 10, 15 examples that almost always fit any situation. So you can imagine that you are explaining some tough concept technically to people who are non-technical, and then I am talking about leasing of a car to them, that they have to imagine that they want to lease a new car. It can be BMW, for example, and then from that perspective we go forward, and then they realize what I am talking about. They don't need to know the technical details, that there is a Kubernetes, there is a cluster, there are namespaces and pods. No, I try to find something completely different idea. Like Kubernetes, I'm always describing as this matryoshka doll. This Russian doll, that there is another doll inside and another. So the big one is this cluster, and in such cluster there is another one which is a namespace, and in a namespace there is another one which is a pod. And this way, inside the pod, I have maybe a microservice which is another. So these are such examples, and this is how I try.
So no pushing, but generally trying to get people to utilize some of those skills to help them. Basically, I think one thing that you've mentioned also is not being alone with the problems, right? And that's something what I've been challenging myself as well as often a leader, because I felt like people feel like they need to solve their problems themselves, and it's probably something what you also faced in being a consultant, when it's kind of pressure is on you to come there and solve the problems, but sometimes the problems cannot be solved without asking some questions, and then it seems like almost impossible for a lot of people to understand that, oh, it's not like you are having all of the solutions of problems inside of your head, but you are finding the solution. So I think this is also something what I think is good to see, because something what you've described right now feels like, for me, like a kind of culture in the team. Like if you have a culture where someone can just normally come to you and ask some good, bad, stupid question, however we'll name it, they will find an answer, or they will find a help or direction. And if they won't ever ask this question, they will never find out, right? Is that something what you feel like, building this culture around the team and making people aware that they can always rely on each other, right?
Yes, And it's super important as well that they can rely on you at any point in time and that they don't treat you as a boss. This is something that I always try to do when I join a team, and I am external one. I am a new guy and I join a team as a tech lead or software architect. I'm not a boss. I am always saying that immediately. Guys, don't treat me as a boss. I'm just a regular engineer with a different function than you. Yes, I might have specialized in software architecture, so we can always discuss problems related to software architecture, but I'm not your boss. I'm not saying you have to do this, that, or something else. No, we decide as a team.
That's good. That's good. Let's talk about how you do it then, because it seems always seems like, as you mentioned, the grass is always greener. Each role has different range of responsibilities and range of powers. How do you manage, jumping between those hats, and how do you manage to deliver so many things? Also having in mind the fact that you are still doing a lot of the things outside of your, let's say, typical job. Which we will touch upon in a little while. So, do you have any secrets of managing yourself and time to deliver the results, or there is no secrets?
I think there are no big secrets here. Everything what I have already mentioned, like being tech lead is just, that's one of the most important things. As a tech lead, you don't need to be the best programmer inside the development team. I was a tech lead in teams where I had way better programmers than me, and that was great. Then you feel supported. So this tech lead role is more like people know that if they have problem, they can come to you. You can solve it together and so on. So this is, I would say, the natural role. That's why it's easy to combine it for me with software architect, because as software architect you have more responsibilities than as a tech lead, at least from my experience. And then in fact you have just one role or one function that is named nice with two different functions, but in my opinion it's really close to each other. While we are talking, of course, about software architect, the only thing that I can say from the secret, what I try to do always, is to find every single day the focus time spot. Like in my calendar, I always block at least 2 hours per day. How do I do that? Well, one option can be that you start earlier than everyone else. If everyone starts at 8, you start at 7, and you have this 1 hour of focus time. Then another trick is that when everyone goes to eat lunch, you don't go to eat lunch. It has some consequences, because in Poland I didn't have that problem because our
No one
lunches
goes for
were
lunches
quite
at
fast.
specific time. Yeah. I said no one usually have this fixed hour of doing the lunch break, right? So it's easier.
Yes.
But
Yes. And usually it was 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and we were all done, and that's it. Maybe some coffee with some chit chat. But when you are working abroad, like here in Switzerland, there is this hour that you spend on eating lunch. And to be honest, I prefer to leave the job earlier,
yeah.
but not to have to eat this lunch for 1 hour. Of course,
Or extend eating lunch to an hour, just to match the expectation. You can still eat in 15 minutes and accomplish both, right? So
yes.
And do a lot more during the break. I did practice, and I do still practice this in my routines as well, because I work with UK company the most of my time, and they have the same policy. They always have 1 hour blocked for lunch period, and a lot of people are trying to do something what someone else is not doing around this time. So that's a good technique.
Just a funny situation from the past. I once worked with French guys, and they were used to go for lunch for 2 hours. After going to eat lunch, they were always going to some beach just to get some sun. But 2 hours for us,
It's a lot of time.
as we are used to just have like 25 minutes, maybe maximum. These 2 hours were way, way, way too long. So we were able to work during this time, but afterwards, we were leaving the office. They were sitting in the office, let's say till 7 p.m. or so.
Yeah.
And then we were not able to meet each other for more than 3-4 hours per day, because of course, then they were coming to the job later, a little bit later than us, and so on and so on. So I think this is great, because these are these cultural differences, but you will see them, you will spot them when working in international environments.
Okay, so focus time, block time, and doing the work when most of the people are doing something else, maybe. Anything else? Do you have a typical look of your week or day, and other routines that help you to deliver basically more?
Of course, it depends on the role that I am doing. So currently, I'm not working full time this year. Since April, I have not been working full time. Let's say for someone, but if I work full time, these are just two things that I try to have or try to do. If I have some power over change, like when we are talking about changing behaviors, is cutting all the meetings to minimum. I prefer asynchronous communication. Of course, it's not always possible to cut all the meetings. It's impossible. Sometimes it's way better to have this on-site meeting, even on-site meeting. I don't even say that it's a remote one, even on-site meeting. But yeah, in general, I try to omit meetings, because usually meetings are useless, unfortunately. And from my experience, it works that way, that the larger organization, the more useless meetings. And there are meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings, and let's plan the meeting for another meeting. Yeah. This is how it works.
That's one of the episodes that I almost have recorded already. It's more because I see it, of course, amongst various clients, because we work with various companies, and I often smile to myself, as same as I smiled right now when I hear that let's schedule a meeting to resolve this problem. But no one thinks that this will really resolve the problem. It creates another problem, because then we need to find a slot for this another meeting. When in reality we could have solved it just now by doing something, instead of planning the spot or slot in time that hopefully will resolve it all. But yeah, that's another great stuff. That's also why I often ask about this calendar and schedule of time, because it often shows the challenges, how we are, first of all, allowing ourselves or other people to waste our time, unfortunately, in a lot of cases. But other than that, is also how we accomplish more than some maybe other people, because we have some kind of strict rules or policies that helps us doing that. Because if no one else will do it in behalf of you, right? You need to block this time for yourself to accomplish the goal. I also heard about this technique of just addressing the biggest problem first. I don't know if you ever tried that. But generally, if you have maybe even this developers carousel helps doing that, because when you start day by chatting about your biggest problem, you probably will aim to resolve that one, and then the other ones became less and less relevant. And if you will do them, that's cool. If not, they will become the biggest problem tomorrow. So it's this kind of technique that also helps. Did you try anything like that in the past, and that you stick just with those two?
Yes, I tried it, and this is something that I do, but I used a little bit different tactics. So I don't focus on the biggest problems first. No, I just try to address the problem that won't take me more than 2 minutes immediately. So if I am working on something and someone writes to me, I am immediately resolving it. That's why people say, "Hey, you are so fast with answering questions, or with commenting on LinkedIn or so," because I know it won't take me more than 2 minutes, and then I am addressing it fast. Of course, at some point, it might be that you have so many small things that are coming to you. Every 2 minutes, there is a 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes problem, yeah, and then you are only solving such problems. But it works for me. It works for me, especially when the team gets mature. in this cooperation, exchanging thoughts, no knowledge silos, you have more time for such things and less questions. And this is I think one of the powers of this shared knowledge.
What about your productivity then? Don't you feel that you are being distracted by those small interruptions? Because I can speak only for myself right now, but there's memes that are flying around the internet when you have 15 minutes meeting, but in reality it takes a lot of your energy to prepare for the meeting and some of the energy to then offload from the meeting. And I'm exactly this type of person. 15 minutes meeting takes at least 1 hour of my energy all the time. And then all those small distractions, all of those jumpings between the contexts, I found myself at least often drained by those, right? So right now I try to at least find these blocks when I'm I'm still trying to remove distractions and trying those small interactions. How do you deal with that right now? And don't you feel like overwhelmed sometimes by this, constant interruptions?
I would say it depends on the type of a problem that I am currently solving. So in general, I don't have this problem of 15 minutes meeting. Then in general, in total, it takes me 1 hour. I'm treating it more like I jump in, I jump out, and I focus again on the things that I did before. But it works well when you have a repetitive task. So like maybe there is another service in Angular to create, or maybe you have to create some endpoint in .NET, and so on and so on. So this is repetitive one, and you don't need to think a lot about it. You are just doing it mechanically after all these years. When I have problem where I need to focus together with the team, we are just maybe in this developer carousel, or I am in a call with a developer, so no one can interrupt me because it's no disturbing time, and no one can disturb me when I am in a call. So that's another point. But if I have a very complicated problem to solve, what I try to do is I try to work remotely. If the usual routine is that I am working from the office, for these heavy problems, I try to work remotely because I am interrupted less. And the other thing is that I'm not afraid of saying, hey, I won't be in this meeting. So I am rejecting the meeting. If I think I won't add a lot to it, I am rejecting it. Of course, depending on the organization, then someone might come to you and say, hey, you can't reject it. You must be there in this meeting. Then, okay, you can still negotiate. You can say, I will jump in for first 10 minutes. If I can't bring anything, I jump out. And usually it will be, yeah, okay, let's do it that way. The next time when it will say, hey, I feel again that I won't be needed, no one probably would ask you to join this meeting again. So this is the way how you should, let's say, address these problems. When you are working, you should not be afraid to say no. You should not be afraid to reject things. I think this is one of the most important aspects of a good software architect, tech lead, programmer, to be able to say no.
That's true. And I think this was also one of my questions because I did realize it a little bit late in my career, I would say, because I was mainly a yes man. And I work with a lot of yes men as well. And then you realize that you often solving someone else's problem and it's not your role in a lot of the cases as well. So do you feel like you mastered ability to say no these days? Or how do you select things to say no? Is it always driven by your gut feeling or anything that you need to accomplish, or it really depends from the context and the situation?
Of course, it depends on context and situation. If there is a critical issue in production and everyone is running around, of course, I will jump this train, yes, because I can't say, yeah, I won't join this meeting. Or if there is a post-mortem meeting after the fact, after this critical issue. But I think my great advantage is that I had super guys in the beginning of my career. And by super guys, I mean, these were guys who were really assertive, who were able to say no at any point in time. But they were not just to say no because of no. They had always some arguments. And I learned really from the best guys how to deal with people, how to be honest with what you are saying, be direct. I had a lot of luck, I must admit. And yeah, I treat them as my mentors.
Yeah. I have it also written down because you credit them in a lot of the places. And is there any that might be leading to this question? Is there any single kind of advice that you've kind of keep with yourself from those times when you were dealing with them? Saying no and being assertive might be one of those things, but is there anything more that sticks with you since then from the mentors? Because I do agree that you were one thing lucky, but also exposed to those kind of situations, and you were led by example that it can be done like that. If you would be surrounded by people who always says yes and don't do anything else, that would probably be the way to solve your problems now. Is there any other set of advices that you received from them that shaped you how you are right now?
I would say from the software architecture perspective, it's keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
At some point we all want to overcomplicate things, and I still remember one of my software architecture mentors who told, hey man, always try to keep it as simple as possible at the given moment. This is the most important thing. And if you do that, then it was before this evolutionary architecture stuff, before the book, before these YouTube videos, before our evolutionary architecture repository, but it stayed with me. Do not overcomplicate things. Do as simple as possible solutions for the given moment, for the given context. So this is from the software architecture. And one more, but this guy wasn't my direct mentor. So this is, you might know him. It's Gregor Hope.
Oh, I don't know.
He's the author of Software Architect Elevator book, and now Platform Strategy book, and so on. So he's really well known. In this book, he mentioned something like IT architecture is a profession of trade-offs, where flexibility brings complexity, decoupling increases latency, distributing components introduces communication overhead. And this is perfect explanation of the software architecture. And this is something that really resonates with me. And outside of the software architecture and outside this keeping things simple, I think the leading by example. So that if you want to ever lead people, you always have to lead by example. And I am treating myself as a kind of a sergeant in army. So he's there with soldiers and in the field, and they trust him. He trusts the team, and this is how I try to position myself. I'm not any kind of general or marshal. No, I'm just a sergeant inside the team.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy, and to be fair, I also captured a lot of your mentions about aiming to not over-engineer solutions, and I think this is another side effect of maybe not only architects but generally people, teams, and IT professionals, because they want to prevent issues that might never occur, right? And it's like abstracting abstractions just to abstract things, avoiding problems that might not be a problems in the future. And it's also the one of aspects that of evolutionary architecture, the concept that you've mentioned. What inspired you to kind of popularize it and even formalize it into this concept? Was it an observations of people doing this exactly in front of your eyes, or did you realize that it helped you to maybe avoid those types of problems or trade-offs in the architecture field?
Both. So it was happening on my shift, let's say, because I did this also. So it's not like I'm without any fault. I did all these mistakes. And then teams where I worked made these mistakes. Teams that I consulted made these mistakes. And there are two problems that are occurring most. One is that people are oversimplifying things or overcomplicating. What I spot during this 8 years is that we usually tend to overcomplicate things from scratch. And as you mentioned, it can be because we want just to do the premature optimization for scalable solutions. Or maybe we want to have some solution for hypothetical future requirements. And this, in the end, brings this complex architecture for simple problems, because maybe you don't need Kubernetes, maybe you don't need Redis, maybe you don't need microservices. Why do you use Kafka? Maybe you don't need it. So these are always these things. And my strategy usually is that if I see that there are such decisions before I join a team, then I try to, for example, ask my team to articulate specific problems that this complexity solves. I don't say, hey, it's wrong. No, I want to understand what type of problems does this architectural decision solve, yeah? And then maybe trying to guide the team to identify core requirements versus nice to have things, or just use metrics. And as metrics, let's say it can be a maintenance cost, development cost, development time, and so on and so on. Probably these architectural drivers. There are different architectural drivers, but usually it works that way, that if you just increase something, then you decrease something else. If you decrease something else, then you increase something else, and so on and so on. So these things are combined. So this is what I observed the most. And I would say, I don't know the exact statistics, but I would say that 90% of products that I have already seen were overcomplicating things.
Probably the same percentage applies to the things that I was exposed to, but I kind of like the way how you said that there are two sides of spectrum, and there are some people who have been there, done that, and now they want to solve everything simple, but often too simple sometimes for the problem. But I didn't find anything being done too simple, because then you realize that it's not enough and you need to do something more usually, right? But yeah, I kind of like this both sides of the barrier, because yeah, it is unfortunately over engineered in the most of the cases, and then we are often selling things that are not maybe needed. And now, at least now in the markets and the economy, let's say, it's seen even more and more, because also clients and people realizes that they are shooting to the bee with a shotgun or whatever else analogy we would use, but generally they don't have everything what they needed, but they have a lot more that they never needed.
Yes.
But that's one question and one thing that I noted in the meantime is an aspect of planning, because I think again I found myself also, and I saw that a lot of people are trying to plan everything. They want to be prepared for everything. On the other hand, we all talk about this agile thing and always being ready for change and things like that. How much of your actions, and I'm right now taking it beyond architecture only, generally business, career and stuff like that, how much of it is the result of planning, and how much of it is the result of adaptation, or maybe generally pivotal approaches to the situations that are appearing on your path?
I think it's hard to judge. So a lot of things that happened in my career were planned, absolutely. So like finishing university, I knew that I want to finish university. So this was one of the plans that was there, and I did it in time, and I'm happy with that. Then I planned my career that, I want to be a software developer. And at some point I want to become an architect and a CTO. This was, at some point it was even a CTO.
Still on the map then? Still on the
to be honest, I I have already seen too much, and I'm not sure. If you ask me today, I don't know if I should go that way. I like this architecture world, tech leadership on the level of development teams. If you ask me about becoming a CTO, well, it depends, of course, on the organization, but it's a lot of different problems that you will need to solve. And but I became this architect at some point, and of course, things which happened in between, they were not planned, so I had to adapt. I was in an organization where there were no architects. There was just a position of software engineer, super flat organization. But I wanted to dive in these architectural topics, and I was driving then these architectural topics within this team, which I worked with at some point. Yes, so this is something where you can adapt to the current situation. There is no official function, but it doesn't mean that you can't be a software architect, yeah, or can't be focused on software architecture.
Okay, so a lot of it is the result of planning, but of course, adaptation is also a huge part of it. Let's talk now about more and beyond the architecture and code, even though, because as I mentioned, and you also mentioned it as a little bit on your introduction, you did and still are doing a lot of other things. By other, I mean non-hands-on architecture or hands-on coding. You did collaborate and exposed a lot of your again concepts or approaches to solution architecture and also evolutionary architecture concepts through GitHub and open source activities. You did a lot of public talks. You did a lot of podcasts as well, and a lot of participations in various activities. You did write a book not that quite a long time ago called Master Software Architecture. That was a huge accomplishment. So let's talk about it. What inspired you to, first of all, start doing more than just your role, let's say, because I don't believe that someone forced you to start sharing your knowledge. And what inspired you to write a book? And then let's talk, how did you manage to do it and complete it in such a short time? Because I do admire the amount of time that you kind of dedicated to writing the book, as I know how complicated it is from the perception of writer. So yeah, inspiration and then resolution.
Okay, so in general, doing things after work or next to my regular job, it was all inspired by Michał Franz. He used to write some IT blog, and I read it in 2010. I think he started in 2008 or something like that. There was also Jakub Gutkowski and Maciej MJ Je, and I was really like, hey, these guys can do that. Why can't I do it? So I started my own blog in 2010. It was started with C++ stuff, of course, some totally basic things, but this is how it all started. Then I was attending .NET user group in the city where I lived. And at some point, I decided not yet to present anything on this .NET user group, but to present something at my university, because my company that I worked for had a cooperation with my university, and they were sending people to just talk about something at university. And I said, I want to go to my university and talk about some topic. I think system control version or something like that. Doesn't matter. And then it started like .NET user group, another .NET user group, first conferences, and so on until this day. And what I wanted always, I wanted to write a book. I didn't know about what, but I wanted to write a book at some point in my life. And 2 years ago, I decided that this is the moment to write my book. But then I had some nice opportunity to build the AI strategy in one of companies that I worked for, and I just shifted it. And I shifted it, I started doing it. this year in April. I started in April and finished it in August. So maybe not finished, but published it in August. So these were these 4 months of working on the book.
That sounds crazy from the perception of the writer. What was the most challenging part of it, or you didn't find too many challenges then with writing your book?
There were for sure 2 challenges. One technical, one non-technical. So non-technical one was keeping the level of creativity. This was crazy hard. At some point, I think it was after 1.5 months, I had to stop writing for almost 2 weeks. It was impossible for me to write anymore. I just wrote everything what I could, and I wasn't able to write more. So I had a break. And this was this non-technical thing, and keeping this creativity level for, as I mentioned, 3 months of writing, because 1 month there was related to copy editing, feedback from reviewers, and so on and so on. And the technical thing, which was really killing me, were images and diagrams in my book. Preparation of it took tons of time. And the worst thing that I did was that I started with one tool for images. I made all these images within this tool. There were 228 or 226 images and diagrams in my book. And then I decided, I don't like it. I must do it in a different way. And then I moved to Xcode Draw, that you have, these images looking like hand drawn.
And drawing, yeah.
And this is something that took me tons of time.
I can imagine, and again, I highly appreciate the dedication, but also to recap that you've devoted your whole kind of time and full almost role to deliver the book that you've planned, and again, huge commitment and again, huge accomplishment at the end of the day. Because right now also I saw it recently on some of your socials that you got the book printed as well, right? So it's not no longer only a digital version, but there is a physical possibility to enjoy that, right?
Right.
Did you print it yourself, or did you use some kind of publication service to print it out?
I'm using Amazon KDP. It works that way, that when someone orders the book, they print it and they send it. It's super easy for self-published books. Of course, from the royalty perspective, it could have been better, but yeah, whatever. To be honest, with this printed version, I was always thinking that, first I will publish the ebook. And the ebook was published on Limpub. Limpub has a great royalty system. So it's like they take 20% from you from each book, and 80% goes to you. And I knew that what I want is this book to be spread as wide as possible, to just get a lot of feedback and some comments regarding this book and so on. And then I started reworking the content, in the meaning of, I fixed here the typo, here there was a mistake in the image, here I added some information because someone said that it wasn't that clear, so I added some information. And it took around 3 months, almost 3 months, 2.5 months. And then I said, okay, I am ready to release it as a paperback. So I created all these things on Amazon KDP, and this version, this paperback version, is within all these corrections that I made during this 2.5 months.
Okay, that's I didn't know that Amazon has this service, but at the same time, doing this that way probably is still easier for us as who are kind of self solopreneurs, I would say, on this level, to not go into the publishing or printing thousands of books and keeping them in the basement to sell and to get out of the dust from time to time. But I know as well, because I did this dream and I accomplished this mission a while ago as well, that writing a book is just a a checkpoint, and finishing the book is just the beginning of the whole journey. So now you distribute the book. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that the book was kind of meant to be the driver of your future steps, or it was just a, I don't know, addition to your I don't know, maybe accomplishments, career, or the way of just delivering knowledge to the wider group of people through the delivered and ready product. How do you right now approach the book promotion, the activities around the book, and activities around everything what you do right now to reach out more people? And I want to also address that you are also heavily active in the newsletters field, because your newsletter, Fractional Architect, is regularly delivered to my inbox and many other inboxes, I do believe. So do you still consider it as a kind of business itself? Do you treat it as a business, or do you just want to do it? And how many book copies do you sell? It doesn't matter that much.
Hard question, because I think it changed over time. So when I was releasing this book, I thought that, okay, there are authors who reach 5,000 books in a year. So if I reach 2,500, it would be great. Yeah. Then I released this book. It wasn't that easy to get a lot of readers. Nowadays, it's quite nice, because I checked it before today's talk, and it's both paperback and ebook, around 650 copies. So it's quite nice, I would say. And finally, I am satisfied definitely with that. And for example, now I don't look anymore at how much I would earn on this book, because in the beginning I was looking at it. I am honest with you. I was looking at it. I wanted to know how much would it earn, but nowadays I don't care anymore about it.
Did you also calculate the amount of time divided by the amount of profit from the book? Because I did try this exercise, because and let me just maybe share more context, because I spent an enormous amount of time collecting input and writing. Then I had some kind of breakdowns and a lot of other distractions that made me not write it on the planned schedule. But when I finalized it and I started selling it, then I realized that, damn, probably I'm earning, let's say, $1 per hour that I devoted to this book. So it was never meant to be a business project, and isn't a business project. But it was curiosity that drove me to check it. Probably the same motivation was next to you when you were thinking about it. Did you ever did it like that? Of course, you had a little bit shorter amount of time devoted to writing a book, but yeah, I know a lot of authors. For example, bringing Konrad Kokosa here, for example, who is very widely known as an author of the Pro.NET management, Pro.NET memory management book. And yeah, it's not that sustainable way of being wealthy as a book author. You probably would need to do nothing more than writing books all the time and releasing book after the book. So how do you approach it right now? If you do not count it, it's just there to mention, to distribute. Do you plan to update the book?
It's there. It's there. What I am looking for is to get as much traction as possible. So I want this book to be spread as widely as possible, but not anymore with financial reasons. And this is like with this paper book. Their royalty is really low on each sold book. And by really low, I mean it's like €3 or something like that per book. But still, I am looking for this book that it can reach as many people as possible, and I hope it will. But if you look at some success stories of self-publishing, and we have these guys like Simon Brown from C4 Model. Yeah. He wrote 2 books and published it on Linkpub, and they sold like 25,000 books. Yeah. Crazy. You have Gergely Orosz, who wrote this software engineer's guidebook. I think it's called like that. Probably. It's also sold, I think, with 30,000 copies or even more. So these are the successes, yes. But to be honest, to have such a great success within your book, you need to either do something before that got a lot of traction, like the C4 model or like event storming from Alberto Brandolini, and then you can write the book and it will sell really well. Or you can do things like Gergely or any other guy who is a, let's say, content creator. They have huge amount of followers, subscribers to their newsletters and so on, and then you can sell it. Or the third option is like my colleague who was also a reviewer of my book. He just published the event sourcing and event modeling book on Nimpub, and it's a great success. I think it's fourth week in a row at the top of the top selling books.
Nice.
So this is kind of a popular topic, but it was not well described within a book. So that's why he decided
finding
for
a
it.
niche. Yeah, finding a niche.
Found a niche, yes. So I think these are the three key things when you are thinking about writing your own book. And coming back to the question with this hour ratio, the entire writing with everything until publishing took me 753 hours. Next,
Okay, I'm doing
I
math.
probably spent at least 50 hours on marketing, promotion, and so on. So it's 800. So I would say it will be somewhere around $12 per hour. Not that bad. Not that bad.
Yeah, that's nice. Still 6 times more than my initial calculation. So it's interesting. But yeah, again, it's usually it's not done for business profit, but you never know if it won't ever reach out the traction by another actions that you will be still doing, right? And generally, I observe a lot of authors. You've mentioned Maciej MJ Je, for example, right, in the past, who wrote the book, but then he was just doing blogging and building communities for 10 years before releasing a book. So it's never an overnight success of just writing a book. Sometimes it is, but it must be a plot of multiple circumstances that will lead to the overnight success of something like this. But in other cases, it's always like people are doing a lot of other things that then are materialized by some also some contributions from people, because they are thankful for something that they did by paying them through the buying books, for example. That's also something what I've seen. But yeah, that's interesting to see. And again, it's always great to have another author and people who are doing this. But because right now, first of all, it's also correct me if I'm wrong, but it's still an interesting maybe not argument, but something that people consider as an accomplishment from the external perspective. And whenever you are able to also confidentially say that, yeah, I wrote a book about this topic, so I explored this topic. I spent 753 hours or more exploring this, and even though I might not still consider myself as the best architect, I did explore all of those topics, and I know something about it, right? So it is in your hand already now. So that's always better to have rather than not to have it.
Yeah, I agree. But if I am looking now from the perspective, maybe this perspective is too short at the moment, because the perspective will be better in 5 years or so. But if I look at it, it's, I think, something about satisfying your own ego. I mean, writing the book, but it's a short-term thing. At some, maybe it stays with you for the first 2 weeks, and then it just becomes like a past project, normal thing that you did, and that's it. So
probably, as with everything else on our way, it will always be a past project, and there will be another mountain to climb, right?
yeah.
So what's your next mountain then? Are you planning to write another book in the future? Are you planning to do something else instead? What are your closest future plans?
So I don't plan to write another book. However, it's already happening, but it's more like a very short one, 80 pages. Before I wrote this book, I wrote some kind of booklet about domain-driven design, strategic one, and then I got some feedback that it could be better if it has a different title and also a little bit different content, more towards the book that I wrote afterwards. So this is something that I am planning to finish in the beginning of 2025. It will be available on Linkpub also, but for free. So I won't charge anything for this book. And from the work perspective, yeah, I have something on my mind, but it would be more in a regular one, regular job.
Okay. Now, because we will be slowly winding out, I think I want to look at the past for once, and then look at the future, and then we can jump to some questions at the end of the interview.
Sure.
But let's jump back to the past, because you've mentioned that you have 12 plus years of experience, and you are still exploring, learning on the way, and changing hats multiple times. If you would need to choose one thing you would wish you have done differently earlier in your career, or any kind of realization that could help you do more, or even it's easy to say from the perception of time now, but generally, if you would like to do something differently from the past, would you be able to select anything like that? Start doing something, stop doing something, anything like that you kind of see right now?
For sure, stop over engineering in the
Earlier.
first of my career. This is the first thing that I would do. And to be honest, maybe jumping more between companies. However, I tackled this problem because I then started my own company at some point, and I was also doing additional things for other companies. So let's say I tackled it a bit, but still I think I could have jumped between jobs, like 1 year here, 1 year there in the beginning, like for 4 years. I think it would speed up my career definitely. But yeah, I don't want to say that I regret that, but
No,
I
it's
think
not
it
about
could
regrets. Yeah.
have brought more or a better result. But you never know. Maybe not.
Yeah, again, we are here now, and we cannot change it, but it's interesting to see this perception. That's cool. That's really cool. And then let's look at the future. Is there anything that right now excites you the most about any new concept, anything that you are exploring at the moment, from both software architecture perspective, or technology trends, all of those, AI agents, anything else? Is there anything that excites you right now, truly excites you?
So for sure, it would be platform engineering. That this is a topic that I am currently exploring a lot, because I also love topics related to infrastructure. So this is something that I am looking at. Also, quantum computing. I think, of course, we don't know how it would be in 10 years or so, but yeah, I think we will have a huge change if quantum computers become a standard. I'm not sure if it would happen during our life, but if it happens, then we would have tons of different issues, problems to solve, and so on and so on. So this is something that is super interesting, absolutely. And regarding the artificial intelligence, hard to say, because I was super excited about artificial intelligence first when I was at university. It was like, wow, crazy thing. Then I came back to these topics, but more in machine learning, 2017, 2018. I also did quite a lot of presentations about machine learning in .NET. So I was also quite interested in this topic. And then in 2019, there was GPT-2. And when I saw the capabilities of GPT-2, what it can do, it was like, whoa, crazy thing. There were all these videos where it was creating mobile I think it was a mobile application just by typing things. Of course, we can talk about the quality of the code from the systems, but still it was like a big wow, and I was super interested in it. And of course, when it was released to public also. But at some point, I'm this type of a guy that when there is this hype on Gartner cycle, at the top of the Gartner cycle, I'm just getting away from the topic. I don't want to be there. I see so many bad things around how companies are dealing with these topics. I'm not only talking about artificial intelligence, but also other topics. How big bubble is there at the top? Then I am not there because I don't want to do such things. I come back when it's again at the bottom. And this is the moment where, let's say, we are slowly hitting this last part of the
That's
cycle.
interesting point of view. But also, as you mentioned, you've joined the train of AI at least very early, and you tried to adopt it quite fast. And then right now, it's great to hear from your point of view that it always is like it's not that revolutionary as it was back then. But of course, right now the adaptation is widely done. I'm always curious about those trendy things, and I'm similar in this case of being kind of more pragmatic and more like distance from the trends. But when the trends are overcoming the approaches from avoiding the trends, then I'm there and I'm trying to adopt it as much as I can. Right now, the topic that I explore a lot is something like sustainability within the infrastructure. And I think as well, I wanted to ask you at some point, because I don't know, again, if living in Switzerland makes you exposed to it even better, even more, or even a little bit different, because in UK or other countries, the sustainability topics are becoming more and more relevant. A lot of countries needs to report on carbon consumption and CO2 and all the other stuff. And also from the infrastructure perspective and software architecture, keeping things simpler seems to resolve a lot of problems, because we don't need those 32 vCores, 7 servers hidden in data center somewhere in general to serve the static content page for 12 pages visited by 3 users daily. So is that something what you see? Is that something what you also explore from the infrastructure perspective, or not maybe yet?
Not yet. I would say not yet. Of course, there are discussions about the usage of energy and so on, but I have already seen also this chart when there were these languages, programming languages, and how energy efficient they are. And this is something
Crazy.
crazy. But yeah, this is a problem, and this problem gets bigger and bigger. So you have to somehow solve it. But from the infrastructure perspective, I would say what I see at the moment is more towards costs. So companies at the moment, they try to just decrease costs as much as possible. So all these fancy things that were done like 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, well, they generate a lot of costs, and companies need to find a way to decrease it, to reduce it. And this is the way where, for example, very experienced DevOps might help.
I agree. Awesome. Let's jump then to the final sets of the interview. I think that wraps up a lot of the topics, and I probably asked you about everything what I wanted to ask you from the field, as you've mentioned. So now two final bits before we will completely wrap up. One is the question from other busy programmer left to you, and I will ask you the same. So you will leave the question to someone who will be interviewed next, without knowing who it will be. And the question that was left to you is, what music album accompanied you for the longest period of your life?
I know from whom this question is, and this is funny because we talked about music when we last saw each other.
Yeah.
The album. I usually don't like to listen to albums. I prefer to listen to mix. But this is something that will be probably surprising to most of the people who know me. But I love to listen to Edith Piaf when I am coding.
Okay.
It's like I love it. This is the first thing that comes to my mind, and
Okay.
if I check it, probably this would be the one. When I have
If you
first
coded a
time,
lot of solutions with Edith Piaf, that makes sense. That it was definitely accompanying you for the longest period of your life so far.
yeah, and during some harsh time, I would say it's Polish hip hop.
Okay. Any favorite artist from Polish hip hop field, or if
And
it's
a
hard to choose one?
favorite artist, Caliber 44
Classic.
for sure. And yeah, the rest I just listen to everything what could be there, like yeah, WWO, Warszawski Deszcz, Wzgórze ja patrzy. So a lot of different hip hop squads. Peasant, of course.
Yeah.
I forgot about Peasant. Yeah, but the
Nice.
one really like the most listened music by me would be Edith Piaf.
That's an interesting answer. Thanks for bringing that. And as I said, I will ask you to leave me one question that will be asked to someone who will be interviewed next. So yeah, time for quick questions and aka shots. The quick rules are that there's only answer A or answer B, sometimes yes or no, but there's no explanations next to the answers. So it's just an answer, and then we move on. And I have a couple of questions selected to ask you. Some of them you already asked a little bit during the interview, but let's go through them. So first question is, do you prefer real-time chats or async communication?
Async communication.
Handwritten notes or digital notepads?
Handwritten notes.
One big long project or multiple small tasks applications?
Let's say long project.
Coffee, tea, or something else?
Coffee without caffeine.
And favorite programming language?
Java. No, I'm joking. I would say C#.
And last but not least, late nights or early mornings?
Early mornings.
And these were quick shots. So
Cool.
yeah, thanks for those answers. Yeah, I kind of like these questions. I need to evolve my database of questions because they are tricky to answer without explaining why. Because the why needs to stay open. Maciej, awesome. Thank you very much for your time, for everything else, and your commitment to sharing the architecture concepts and simplicity behind it. I truly adore it. And since I watched also your presentation about evolutionary architecture, I try to share this pattern amongst all of the people I work with, because I think, like, we all need to remind ourselves that simple can be perfect, and it often is perfect. So thank you very much for that. Is there anything, any materials or any also, of course, other than your book, that you could leave our viewers or listeners with, that would be something like you highly recommend to explore more around leadership, architecture, anything else than that? Do you have a set of books that or resources that you always recommend?
Yes, I would say I have such sets. For example, for seeing how things can work in C# and .NET with evolutionary architecture. We have this evolutionary architecture by example repository, which we created with Kamil Bączek. And from books which I really love, there are tons of them, but let's say this Architect Elevator from Gregor Hope. This is for me number one. Software Architecture Hard Parts. This is another good book. I can't remember the authors, but yeah, this is something that I can recommend. And another one, if someone is interested in domain-driven design and learning it, there is a great book from Vladimir Kononov, Learning DDD. I think this is the best book as the entry point to the topic of domain-driven design.
Yeah, that's an awesome set, and I will make sure that the links to the books that you've mentioned will be linked somewhere, wherever the episode will be released. And last but not least, where is the best place to find you in the internet, if people will be looking for catching up with you?
For sure, LinkedIn, because this is the only social media that I use. I don't have account in Twitter or in X or Blue Sky yet. We will see, maybe at some point, but LinkedIn and my newsletter.
Awesome. Again, thank you very much for your time and for sharing the knowledge from your point of view with us and with everyone who will be listening or watching it later after distribution. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch up and see each other on some conference paths somewhere in Poland or somewhere in the world, or maybe in Switzerland at some point when there will be more opportunities to exchange knowledge there. So yeah, again, thank you very much, and keep up the amazing work that you do. And I do hope that we'll be able to refresh the knowledge about your plans and ambitions and everything else that you will be doing, maybe next year or years after some of the plans will materialize. So yeah, once again, thank you very much, and yeah, have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure to be here. And yeah, have a great evening.
Yeah, thanks, Maciej, again. Cheers. Bye bye.
Cheers.